We're live. Would you like a glass?
Sure.
I will get a couple of them. Welcome those who are tuning in. Let us know if we look good, sound good. Let me pull that up and make sure that we're on. You got it? We're on? Sweet. Sweet. We are on. We're real people. We're human beings. And we are live on the internet. Welcome everybody to the Genus Brewing live stream. Today we are joined by Jimmy, who you might recognize from a few weeks ago when he did a live brew over at No Drought Brewing. That was for a Pro-Am that he won. Local homebrew competition Pro-Am thing. But one thing that I know Jimmy for is he was one of the first people in the area actually to get Kveik before Kveik was popularized, or one of the first people to get like dehydrated Kveik. So you got into Kveik probably earlier than most people. At least you got into it more aggressively than most people in the area, I think.
Yeah, so the first Pro-Am I did was with Iron Goat, and that was when we were doing the beta testing for Imperials, the Kveiking.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kind of sparked it, and then kind of put me into a rabbit hole, and I found a bunch of different sources online where you can find the dried stuff that's more varied than all the commercial yeast and strains that are out there.
Yeah, and you got like little like not dehydrated dried yeast, but like dried
yeast cake.
Yeah, yeast cake, like the stuff that you would normally pitch like way back in the olden days that was stuck on pieces of wood, or what like the Norwegian farmhouse stuff actually is currently used for. Jiang Hakio, thanks so much for the super chat and good morning. Peter, you are always smexy. I'm not gonna say that's wrong because it's not. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't go so far as to say expert, because that's a pretty big word, but I would say the local expert on Kveik probably in terms of people that I know actually.
I've done a lot of looking into it for sure.
Which is awesome. Matt Wiza, hey friends, what are you drinking? What are we drinking?
So this is I posted the recipe on the Discord, but it's kind of an amber ale, but kind of inspired by Christmas. While they talk about all the holiday beers. I added some of my juniper.
Okay, yeah.
To it.
It's got a nice soft fruitiness too, but the spruce that's in the juniper, that's where it's getting kind of that brightness from. Does it have hops?
I did Provoke hops, which is a mixture of they don't disclose what the hop variety is, but they actually add toasted oak barrel shavings into it. So I added kind of for the woody part. Yeah. And then added some bitter orange peel too.
Okay, yeah, there's some definite brightness to it. It's like it's kind of, and don't take this in a bad way, but like Mac and Jacksy in terms of the overall base, but it's got like a distinct brightness. It's really good. That's what I'm trying to say. I enjoy it, but it reminds me a little bit of Mac and Jack's. I think Mac and Jack's has kind of the
toastier kind of amber.
Yeah, and it's got a little citrus note too. It's got some brightness. I think that's kind of coming through, which is really awesome.
The yeast is Nystein, which is basically, as far as the descriptors, it's the same as Voss, like the original Voss.
Okay, nice.
And then for the little bit more toasty, I added some pale chocolate to this as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, nice roasty toasty amber. I'm digging it.
And it's only 5 days old.
And it's only 5 days old, which is crazy. It tastes, well, obviously the oaky kind of flavor I think probably helps a little bit, but it tastes more mature than that. So you brewed this 5 days ago.
On Tuesday.
That's awesome. And the recipe's in the Discord. If you guys aren't on the Discord, then do that. Pamela Hakala, good morning. I'm torn between plain old tea and a hazy IPA. I'd go hazy IPA. That's just because I'm already drinking anyway, so. It's another morning. Well, let's go over some just generic, I don't know if you have any generic news. I'll go over some Genus Brewing news. Label printer up and working and live, and so I'm printing out a lot of fun labels. So if you send me a label design that's 5 inches by 6 inches by next week, I'll print it out and put it on a can and drink it. That's about all I can promise. We tapped our Count Chocula, this year's version of Count Chocula. That happened this week, and we brewed our Castor Muncher. And then we also brewed a big batch of Genus Stone Light. That's what we did this week. Any news on your end besides making a 5-day-old beer?
Nope, just waiting on that Schwartz beer to get put on top probably in a couple weeks still.
Nice. Are they lagering it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be fun. We should go back there and drink it. Or can up some and drink it here.
Yeah.
One of those things. Well, let's jump into the news of the day, the word of the day, the subject of the day, the topic. We're going to talk about Kveiks, guys. That's what's on the docket. Matt Weiser says, also Genus news. I have every state figured out for the live stream. Sweet. Ogre Libations, do you guys upload to Spotify? We're on a lot of podcasty things, but I don't know if Spotify is one of them. Pamela Hakla, if we send homebrew, who do we put as a recipient? I forgot who took over for Tim. Put Matt as the recipient. Matt Weiser. He'll be the one to... Oh, yeah, he already said that. Anyways, I miss Matt's little stand thing. That was really nice. So how many different strains of Kveiks are there? We just looked this up a little bit ago, and you said there's 69 on the registry?
Yeah, which that also includes some stuff that isn't technically Kveik, but it's treated similarly.
It's Kveik adjacent?
Yeah. So like Javaru.
Okay.
It's a
so yeah, the farmhouse strains or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a fun strain to do. We did a saison side by side using that, but that one's definitely funkier overall in the Kveik-esque kind of spectrum.
Yeah.
We should probably back up for people who are tuning in that aren't super familiar with Kveik. Kveik actually is it's categorized as a yeast, right? But it's not. Is it Saccharomyces cerevisiae? Or it's a different breed altogether.
It's its own thing.
It's its own thing.
So it's like there's beer 1 and beer 2, and it falls into a different category.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done any of the background genetics research on Kveik. So how would you describe it to a brand new person who has maybe made their first Mr. Beer kit, maybe a first extract batch of beer? How would you describe Kveik?
It's the best thing for a home brewer that doesn't have temperature control.
That's not wrong.
It's hard to explain, because there's so many different strains of Kveik that have their own flavor profiles. So you can't lump, Kveik is this flavor. It's this method of, ferment hot and quick, or you can ferment slightly above room temperature. You don't have to ferment super hot.
So we'll call it like a yeast substitute, but it's got, first of all, it works really fast. Second of all, you usually, not always, but usually need an extremely low pitch relative to an actual yeast, like beer yeast kind of pitch. And then third, it works at a range of temperatures. And there's some that do work down at like regular beer temperatures, right?
Yeah, there's some that go down to like 60s.
Yeah, mid-60s. I don't think there's anything that goes like super, super low, but like mid-60s for... Yeah. I know Lutra is one of the ones that goes down pretty low. And it actually prefers being at a lower temperature relative to the other Kveik strains. But then on the hot end, they go up to what, 105?
Yeah.
So
a lot of them kind of peak around the 95 as far as that way they're kind of safe of not going too hot.
Right.
Because of the exothermic that it does through the fermentation anyways.
It's going to produce its own heat, and so you're going to get natural heat building up over the course of the brew itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, they can survive pretty hot too. So they like fermenting in that 95, maybe up to 100 degrees, depending on the strain. But they don't have thermal death until like 115, right? 115, 120. Like so they can work pretty hot. They're very hardy yeast strains too.
Yeah, and that's still with no off flavor. So that's the biggest, and that's why everybody likes it right now. Is you can go super hot and it's still a great beer. Yeah,
and they don't have off flavors, but they do each have their own kind of unique thing that they do. One thing that I've noticed is that it's very difficult to perfectly mimic a beer made with like a selected yeast with a Kveik strain, because you're always going to get something different. Like for example, some will produce like a tangerine kind of note or like an orange note or something like that. You were talking about what strain were you talking about before we were on the live stream? That was
the mango.
Yeah, the mango strain. Hothead. Okay, and so you use hothead for like what, wheat beers, stuff like that?
Yeah, I just do like a simple wheat beer, a couple ounces of hops.
And then it's got a little bit of pseudo citrus, tropicals, and all that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So 69 dudes. So 69 strains, quote unquote, strains of Kveik, and they're broken down into farmhouses. Okay, and that's kind of like where the origins, basically.
So basically, traditionally, way back in the day, people would grow their own barley, malt it, and they'd have like maybe one harvest a year, and they would make a big batch of beer. And that's the other thing with this Kveik is it can handle super high alcohol, and they would make one big batch of beer a year. It'd be like 10 or 11%.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And so what are the farmhouses that it's broken down into?
It's just literal. They're farms.
Yeah.
It's farms. So.
And they're categorized by, so that's like Hornadal is one of them, right?
That's not just the name of that they gave it, but it's attached to this one farm in Norway.
Oh, gotcha. Oh, and those are those very Kveik or whatever, like kind of names that we can't really pronounce.
Yeah.
I mean, it's why it's same with Kveik. That's why we say Kveik instead of Kveik or whatever it's pronounced. Oslo. Oh, you were just talking about Oslo. Lutra, Voss, my favorite, and Oslo's just another strain. Oslo's the that's still unidentified where it came from, right? And that one's one that's
Oslo?
Yeah.
That one's from Brewing in Norway.
Okay.
It's supposed to be another one of those lager-like ones that, as far as commercial, you get it from Bootleg Biology.
Right. And then that's so that's the competitor kind of to Lutra, right?
Right.
So, but it's from Bootleg. And is it only from Bootleg or does it come from other places?
It's only from Bootleg.
So Bootleg you can get Oslo. And then Lutra, obviously that's proprietary to Omega Yeast Labs, but that one comes in both liquid and dry, which I think is pretty cool. Listening while I drive to a brewery. Awesome, Matt. Three Dogs Brewery, give me your thoughts and experience using ascorbs and or metabisulfates to emulate decoction. We will get into that, but probably not until we've hashed out more Kveik stuff. In general, I use ascorbs in the mash, and I do get a lot of similar compounds that are built that you would get from doing a decoction mash. That doesn't necessarily mean the flavors from decoction come, but some of the benefits from decoction come there. Patrick Sandy just moved back to Florida yesterday. Moving people, unloading now. Will listen later. I'm accepting the housewarming beers until I can get a brewery again. We need to send you one. I have an address. I just haven't sent it yet. Remind me. So the three farmhouses that it's broken down into, what would you say? So what are the... Let's go through the commercial examples that we can get from Kveik, because we've got of Kveik producing things that we can get. We've got Imperial that makes some. I don't know if Yeast or White Labs versions.
White Labs does.
Does White Yeast have any? Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Where's that? What's that one? Which strain is that?
That one I'm not sure.
I haven't looked into White Labs in a long time.
Yeah,
So
I think it's Opshog, and I think they might have came out with a Voss too.
Okay.
But I never really used White Labs, so I'm not sure.
Voss is the first one that kind of made it everywhere. So Voss is the one that you can get from Lallemand. You can get it from Mangrove Jacks. Those are two dry packets. You can get it from Imperial. You can get it from Omega. Probably from a bunch of other places. But Voss is that's the first one that really came out, right? Before even Kveiking.
That was the first commercial, like big commercial one that came out.
And the nice thing about that one was when it came out, like IPAs got super popular with it because Voss produces kind of some fruity tones too, right?
Yeah, that orange citrus.
Yeah.
In general.
I saw a lot of hazies made with Voss right after it came out, and that was the first Imperial release of and Imperial, I think in the area at least, was the first person that kind of popularized commercial pitches for Kveik.
Yeah.
So when you go around and get your dehydrated yeast cakes, what resources do you use to get those?
There's a couple of Facebook pages that you can do the buy and sell.
Nice.
Basically, just a lot of it comes from Europe, or I've got a bunch of stuff from Australia.
So it's just people that are like dehydrating their yeast cake and sending it to you?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And you've made a lot of pitches from that too, right?
Yeah.
Do you grow some and then send it out to people too?
I haven't done that. But a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take the little packets, like 2 or 3 grams, and I'll just put a couple sprinkles, make a little starter, and just pull it from that. That way I keep just those flakes as kind of my starter source.
Right, so you can rebuild some new ones?
Yeah.
So how many different have you played with other than what you can get commercially?
Probably 10 or 12.
Wow. That's awesome. Do you use regular yeast anymore, or do you pretty much only use Kveik?
I use regular yeast most of the time, and then when I have basically spare room, I'll do a Kveik test. Because what I like to do is make a really simple beer, so it's not the best tasting beer anyways. Right. But I'll make a nice simple beer so I can get a flavor profile of the yeast, so I can know what it can work with in the future.
Oh, very cool.
But I'm still working through all that, so I haven't really done a lot of repeat
tests. Well, I have I wish I could pull up the actual recipe, but the big batch of Genus Stone Light that I've got going in the 5-barrel right now, that was made with Lutra, and I've been using Lutra as my cheater yeast when I need to like get a beer through really, really fast, because I'll do an entire beer like start to finish in not 5 days, but maybe like 7 to 10 days, and I want it to be pretty free and clear of all that stuff. So I will do those pretty fast, and I've enjoyed Lutra as kind of my cheater yeast because it's relatively neutral no matter how hot you pitch it at. And then in the summer, the nice thing about that for bigger systems is that because our groundwater isn't as cold, it's hard to get into the fermenter quickly, at a low pitching temperature. So we'll go in at like 95 and just locked and loaded, ready to go.
Yeah.
Kveik it. We'll grab another beer. In the meantime, you should say, I don't know, your most recent non-beer that we're drinking, Kveik.
Oh, that has been a while.
That's fine.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like about getting the non-commercial yeast is you get the actual original strains. So, Voss has 3 strains from the original culture. Imperial, I know, is an isolated strain, and I'm pretty sure that Omega's is an isolated strain as well. So you don't get necessarily the full flavor impact of the original culture. And that's what I want to get, is the full thing. So like Hornindal originally has 5 different strains and lactobacteria built in. And Omega they took the bacteria out, but they still have the 5 strains all built in on that one.
I feel like I feel like I need to learn a lot more about Kveik, honestly. I didn't know that, but I've also only used the isolates. Like I've only used the commercial pitch versions. You gave me a cake one time, and I don't think I ever got around to using it, which is a bummer. I think I ended up I don't know, it might still be somewhere. Matt might know. It went into the yeast abyss fridge.
I think that was Tormagarden, which talking to people like, oh, maybe it's contaminated because it's kind of cidery. That's why I was talking to Tim a couple years ago with that, with maybe doing the graph with the apple.
No, that'd be fun.
Kind of just go with the flavor that it already produces.
That's the interesting about doing the full cultures, though, is you get the even if it in your own continuation, your own brewing and stuff like that, you'll get the natural buildup and progression, and it should in your own brewery do some subtle mutations and maybe grab onto some new bacteria or whatever's kind of floating around.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It's kind of along the same philosophies as like if you get I need to turn down my notification bells. If you get like a cool ship room, like a wooden cool ship room where you've just kind of grown so much beer in it that you never actually have to pitch again because there's porous materials and it's building its own culture in there. Even though it's exposed to open air and more yeast and bacteria can get into where your beer is, it's kind of just created its own microculture already, and it's competitive. Do you know too much about how competitive Kveik is, or most Kveik strains are?
I think they're pretty fast. I think I was listening to a video with escarpment and stuff, where even at room temperatures, the Kveik strains will ferment out faster than regular, just say Cali yeast or whatever.
Right. Do they actually inhibit other growth?
I don't know if they're a killer, but they just act faster.
Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be fun to look into. If you know out there in the YouTube worlds, let us know in the comments. But there are some strains out there. French Saison is a really good example of yeast strains that will be competitive against other yeast and bacteria, which is really nice because that means that the yeast itself will actively kill off bacteria and yeast that come into your system. And so if you've got, let's say you're starting a sour room or something like that, Saison strain, French Saison specifically, is a really good starter for a Solera project because a lot of the bacteria that will, be spoiling bacteria just can't survive because French Saison attacks it and kills it. It produces little microtoxins that blow up the competing bacterias. River Rivera, different Kveik cultures are noted for the propensity to produce fruity aromas such as citrus, apple, orange, rum, or tropical fruits. Yeah. Patrick Sandy, thank you. Peter can coordinate as he has my address. Yep, that thing. I'm going to guess that's a comment from Matt. Ooh, Pamela Hockley wants to send Patrick Sandy some beer too. Everyone send Patrick Sandy some beer. If you don't do it, then do it anyways. Nan used to work with Sigmund Kveik, aka Voss Kveik. Interesting. Voss is great. Switched to Verdant recently and ferments just as fast. I'm much slower at reading on my phone than I was on Matt's giant thing. We miss your screen.
I think one thing that a lot of people look at is, like River Rivera mentioned, the underpitching. I know Escarpment did a couple studies where they did a couple different of their strains or cultures, and they're in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
That's another really good source for yeast if you're in Canada.
Escarpment Labs.
Yeah, they have a bunch of. They used to do like a monthly Kveik, different.
Like a
release.
subscription.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah. So they did a test, and there's, again, it's not a one answer because some of them, if you underpitch, you got a more intense flavor profile.
Mhm.
Some of them, if you did a regular pitch, you got the same, so it didn't matter.
No. Yeah.
So, which I think is nice because then you're not worrying about, well, I have to underpitch to get this flavor profile. Versus,
Yeah. So you don't know. You don't need to try to calculate how much you underpitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
I honestly.
Like, you can get away with underpitching. That's the nice thing.
Right. And that's kind of what I've done on the big system here. I haven't really thought too much about what I do, but I kind of have like an idea that I need a certain amount of yeast in there. But like for the 5 barrel that's over there, I put in 6 11-gram packets for that. And it the next day was just ripping.
Yeah.
I mean, I make sure to oxygenate, obviously, and I make sure to put a lot of nutrients in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 6 11-gram packets in a 5 barrel batch,
Yeah.
which is 150 gallons for those of you out there in Europe who use the imperial standard for volumetric measurement.
But again, you're using Lutra, which is known to be clean, versus trying to get those flavor profiles. So
That's true, yeah. So I don't have to worry too much about,
Yeah.
trying to get all the, nice oranginesses that Voss gets or whatever else.
yeah,
But yeah, the ability to underpitch, I mean, just from a cost-saving perspective, because if you were to go to, any lab that sells liquid culture and ask for a 5 barrel pitch, you're probably looking at $400 to $500 for a 5 barrel pitch.
right.
Whereas, 4 packets of 5 packets, 6 packets of Lutra costs like $30 maybe, or maybe a little bit more than that, but still not much,
Yeah,
which is crazy.
yeah, it's big cost savings. So with Eli Hernandez asking, what do we recommend for a pale ale for Kveik? I would say it depends on which hops you're going to use.
Yeah.
But the standards would be, I would say, would be Voss or Kveiking for Imperial.
Yeah, I think Voss is one of those ones that just naturally blends in with hops. And so if you're trying to do like a pale ale that's designed to be like a hoppy pale ale, like you'd get in a lot of like the Northwest area, then I think Voss sounds really good to me.
Yeah.
I haven't used Kveiking too much.
So that one's their own blend of 3 different isolates.
Right.
It's got Voss in there, and I think 1 strain from Hornindal, and I don't know if it's 2 from Hornindal or if there's a 3rd one in there, like a 3rd original culture that they pulled from.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think 2 from Hornindal and 1 Voss sounds correct, but it's been a long time since I've thought about that. And Kveik was more neutral. No, is it? Yeah, it definitely doesn't have that orange fruitiness to it, does it? But it has
It kind of goes more tropical, but
okay. Yeah, it's been
it adds some of the citrus, but then it's, I guess you could maybe say, more complex than just orange.
Gotcha.
So it
Yeah.
kind of just adds a little more flavors to it. But that's the one that we did for the Iron Go contest, and
Right.
I went the complete opposite way, made a tropical stout.
That sounds delicious. Yeah, all the same flavors that you'd get from warm fermented lager, but just amplified because it's through a, nice fruity Kveik strain. What haven't we broken down on Kveiks just in general? So we've done the underpitching, the value of underpitching. You've compared and said, hey, you can underpitch or you can normal pitch with Kveik, and you'll still get the same flavor. So you don't have to worry about calculating how much you underpitch, which is really good. Have we talked about
Its temperature is one thing too, because like with Voss,
Yeah.
like you said, I think you've done some testing before where if you're like at 80 or below, it's really neutral relatively, and then once you bump it up to 95, that's when it really
When you
picks
get
up
that-
those esters and stuff.
Yeah, distinctly I don't even know if orange comes from esters. I think orange comes from something else, or like those citrus notes. I think it's a different compound that's not even an ester, but yeah, no, you get a lot of those.
Or
The
flavor profile, whatever you want.
Yeah, the fruit flavor that comes out
Yeah.
at the warmer temperatures.
Yeah, this one I did. Like I said, it's basically Voss and I did this one at 98.
Oh, nice. So we've done temperatures really good because if you don't have temperature control, if you're a new brewer, these can ferment warm and they also produce their own heat. And so they'll be relatively good whether you ferment them at 72 or 90. And they also ferment really quickly. So the time part of it is the other. I would say the 3 biggest benefits are you can underpitch, temperature control doesn't matter, and they work really fast. And then we kind of broke down where the Kveiks kind of came from. Have we talked about the original pitching method, like how Kveik was pitched?
So I don't know about like way back originally, but I know that they became because they only brewed once or twice a year, they had to figure out a way to keep their yeast going. Which I think back in the day, they didn't know what they were doing as far as the microbiological level.
Yeah. They just knew what magical things worked.
Yeah. So they would get the Kveik ring, or they'd just make a ring with hay.
Oh, okay.
And what they would do is they would just dip it in the yeast cake, and then they just let it hang to dry. And that's kind of where it became hardy. It would be sitting there for 6 months, and
it had to be enough to like still be alive the next time you used it.
Yeah.
So it's a weird strain because you can use that's why the property of being able to underpitch is something that's inherent to Kveik, is because it had to obviously have some sort of a decay rate just sitting. I don't know if its decay rate's the same as regular beer yeast, but it's got to have some sort of decay rate. Plus, it's going to be desiccated by being dried out.
Yeah.
And it still has to go in and completely ferment a new large batch of beer the next year.
Yeah.
So that's. And Kveik rings, for those of you who don't know, are like these wooden rings that are filled with little spokes. So it maximizes surface area, which theoretically means you're getting more yeast that are staying on the wood. Wood's also porous, but it also, it still is going to be a low overall pitch source versus just like an actual, healthy slurry.
But still, the Kveik rings are probably about this big, so I think that's almost, if you're going to go talk about underpitching and stuff, it's kind of an overpitch in a way. So a lot of people will just take a little chunk of wood and just drill a bunch of holes with it, kind of boil it to sanitize it, and they'll just use that, like a little oak block for like a 5-gallon size.
Right.
Because they're over in Norway, they're brewing like a 55-gallon drum. It's one of the things that I've seen. A large
vat. That'd be fun to do try to build an old world style, just like, hey, let's make a beer with whatever we can find that's not actual brewing equipment.
Yeah.
Like they did. But yeah, so have you gotten one of those little oak blocks from anybody on the Facebook groups that you've done trades with?
No.
That'd be fun. If you guys want to start a Kveik trade, I don't know, let me know. We should make our own Facebook group. Everybody dehydrates or desiccates their own yeast and then sends it around, and that'd be fun to do like a traveling yeast block or whatever.
Yeah, kind of like the wood beer thing.
Lars, any tips for dual pitching Voss with another slower strain like Juicy Barbarian? Should I put the Voss in a day or two later than the other yeast? Yeah, probably. The hard part about that is oxygen uptake. So all Kveik strains chug oxygen, like a crazy amount of oxygen. And so if you did that, I would almost say you'd want to barely get past lag phase on your neutral strain or your regular strain. And then you'd want to, because if you're past 30% sugar depletion, then it can get kind of dicey whether or not oxygen ingress is going to be a bad or a good thing. But if you're not past that point, if you're just barely started and you've dropped a couple of points already, you'd have to. Then it'd be a good idea to pitch and then re-oxygenate. I don't know what the effect would. I'd still imagine that Kveik would just kind of destroy the other strain. Would be my thought.
The other thing would be the fermentation temperature, because you'd have to keep it lower for the other strain.
Right.
You might get some off flavors, some high alcohols if you go too hot.
Yeah.
While it's still fermenting.
With something like citrus, or is it citrus that can go kind of hot?
Yeah.
That's the Sactois strain or whatever. So that might be a decent blending option. The best option in my mind would actually be to make two different beers and blend them together.
Yeah.
I think then you don't have to worry about the competitiveness of Kveik and how fast it goes.
Yeah.
That'd be my thought.
You could probably do a co-pitch with citrus at just say 75 or 80 or whatever, and just if you wanted to do a co-pitch.
Right, like a sort of high amount. Yeah, I could see that. That'd be one of the few strains that I can see actually working fairly well with Kveik. French Saison or any Saison strains can go into that same temperature range, but again, French Saison is a killer, so I don't know what that would do. By a killer strain, by the way, there are yeasts that actually produce toxins that attack other yeast and bacteria. So they will competitively inhibit anything, not just through food source and scarcity, but through physically creating a toxin that is bad for other yeast and bacteria. Combined Stranda and Lida Kveik. one of the purest forms of strains out there, together with soon-to-be-released Vista Hop. That would be something. I haven't heard of Stranda or Lida.
If I'm remembering right, I think Hothead is Stranda, or at least one of the strains.
Okay.
So it gets that tropical fruit. Lida, you can give that mango too. That was one of the things I did with my 5-way split batch.
Okay.
When I was first starting out, I used that. And it gave a definite mango and tropical fruit, kind of like the Hothead did.
That sounds good. That sounds great. So is there a commercial version of Lida, or is it just something you got to get from
You have to source it.
from the spice trade, which Jordan Togstad says +1 for the Kveik trade. Let's do it. Make it happen. Sean Huntley, hola from Northern California. What's up, Sean? Fermented Voss at 101. It turned out with almost lemon flavor, very citrusy. I wonder if when it goes super hot, if it scrubs some of the things that turn the citrusy to orange.
More brighter, maybe.
Yeah, like if, because I know most esters can volatilize not pretty easily, but somewhat easily, and so I'm wondering if just being at that temperature, there's some esterification part of it that turns citrus flavor into orange, right? And then if it's hot enough, if that temperature scrubs out the orange part of it, and so you just get with neutral citrus, which would be closer to like lemon in my mind. Science that I don't quite.
Vera says use lots of nutrient, that's definitely what you need to do. That's another addition.
Yeah.
What you got to do with Kveik, because it's ripping through so fast.
Yeah, I over nutrient by a lot. So I've got I have the White Labs generic nutrient, which they say like 1 ounce is good for 5 barrels. And I probably do 2 to 3 ounces of that in a 5-barrel batch, and over 1 ounce at least in a 2-barrel batch.
Yeah.
I use a lot of it, a very high amount.
I think that's also a bigger deal when you're going to underpitch versus a standard pitch.
Yeah, because they need to multiply so many times that you've got to actually have the the structure in there for them to be able to make new cells and all that.
Yeah.
River Rivera, Milk the Funks has a good article on Kveik. You should link it in the chat. The reason why some breweries want to intentionally underpitch Kveik cultures such as Voss or Hornadal is that they produce more intense esters and aroma during fermentation. That may or may not be true. So Jimmy was just talking about a side-by-side experiment where underpitching and regular pitching, the same Kveik strain, produced relatively. Did they do an actual side-by-side taste test?
Yeah. They actually broke it down in the lab.
Oh, okay.
So they actually did whatever their testing is to find out these different levels. Just go on escarpmentlabs.com or maybe .ca, but just search Escarpment Labs. You can find the
Canada.
Yeah.
Canada website version. And they have the side-by-side study and everything like that, or the actual case study.
And they did, I think, 5 different cultures just
to make sure that it wasn't just one that was.
Yeah. And so what it ended up being is it depends on which culture you have. So.
NY Hornadal Kveik, Rat Void Kveik is my cup of joe. The one with a little bit of cream, mushroom kind of vibe. Good in IPAs. Bubba Mo 6. I feel like that's a innuendo-y name. But you should send me Kveiks. It sounds like you've got a lot of options. John P. saw a whiskey maker talk about splitting mash and fermenting 2 batches with 2 different yeasts, then just blending to get the results you want. Bet you can do that with beer. Oh, absolutely. So in every other world that's not the beer world, blending is a huge thing. Blending mashes isn't as big in the whiskey world as it probably should be, but obviously in the post-production world, post-distillate, blending is how you get all the good whiskeys, and I think that's if the resources were the same, more beer places should be blending.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was saying with when somebody's asking what's the best way to get a
co-pitch.
Yeah, the co-pitch vibe with a Kveik and a regular strain. I think make 2 different beers and blend them together.
Yeah, because you might want 70-30, and then
you have
a lot more control. It's
and
crazy with whiskey too, because
you can taste live too.
Yeah, With the whiskey, though, you have the same thing going to multiple barrels, and each barrel can have a 10 to 20% flavor difference too. So that's where the blending definitely comes in too.
Yeah, the most valuable people in the whiskey world are the tasters.
Yeah.
The people that like they go through and they try each different barrel, and they somehow are able to formulate in their brains, all right, this is a really good barrel, but we really only need 60% of this barrel, and we need more of whatever other flavor. And then they go into all the different barrels, and their brain can put that stuff together. Even the unseen stuff, like the things that you can't directly taste. So it's not like, I want more vanilla, I'm going to put more vanilla in. But they know, hey, this whiskey is coming across slightly acidic. That means it's got this precursor chemical that when I combine it with this is going to form this sweet chemical. And then they know all that already.
Yeah, and then just the proof going in the barrel, low or high, makes a difference. And
yeah,
to get more of the vanillins and stuff pulled out, it's pretty crazy.
It's definitely a fun science. Yeah, it's a flavor science like you wouldn't believe. So single barrel, by the way, doesn't necessarily mean good. Hi from Montauk Beach in New York, camping. Sweet. Water chem question. Is there a reason to dilute RO water, to dilute with RO to reduce bicarbonate if you're adjusting pH for the mash to target with acids? Is there any reason to dilute with RO to reduce bicarbonate if you're adjusting pH for the mash to target with acids? Sort of. That's there's a technique called slaking, and slaking is basically adding acids during the boiling with heated water that's heavy in bicarbonates that will actually precipitate out the bicarbonate depending on what's in there. So if there's calcium in bicarbonate, which usually if there's bicarbonate in the water, there's calcium in the water as well. If you heat that water and you add an acid, it will slake, and so you'll actually reduce the bicarbonate chemically, so you don't need to add RO water. So there is a reason to dilute that because bicarbonate does have a flavor in the final beer, but there's also other ways to get rid of bicarbonate, if that makes sense. I don't know if that answered. Did I answer the question right?
Does it change the mouthfeel too with the high
Yeah, so bicarbonate beer, like high mineral beer in general, has a distinct I call it like a rocky minerality. But you've had probably some British beers that feel balanced, right? They feel like they're in good balance, even though they're relatively sweet, bold, big beers, and sometimes even they have diacetyl in them.
Yeah.
The biggest difference maker in those beers is the fact that the water it's a rocky water. So it has some grits to it, if that makes sense. And a big sweet beer like that, especially if it has diacetyl in it, with a neutral water would taste disgusting.
Right.
So there is a mouthfeel difference when you have bicarbonate in there. But whether or not in my brain, why I don't know if I answered that question though, was if the question was about, is there a difference between
doing that versus doing acid? If you're gonna use acid,
exactly in the mash, and flavor wise, I don't know if I know the answer to that question. If
I would say if you had a high bicarbonate, then you'd have that rocky.
Right.
So you want to dilute that anyways with RO.
Yeah.
But if it's generally within the right bounds of your beer style, I guess it's not necessary.
Right, and if you're using an acid that's below the flavor threshold, I don't think there's any other things that would sneak up if you had the acid in the mash that I know of. So yeah, that was a better answer. You use RO water if you want the overall profile to be smoother and less rocky, less minerally, and don't use RO water if you want that rocky profile, that rocky mouthfeel like with sweeter beers. Thank you for helping me answer that. That was good. I didn't understand exactly where I wanted to go with how to approach that, because I'm like that, and my brain's thinking three different ways. I'm like, no, pH wise you can do it both ways, but also flavor wise there's a bunch of different things you can make. Also, good question, Dave. Let me know if we answered it the way that we should have. Wish Matt was here. Matt was really good at making beers happen. You want to try that homebrew?
Sure.
Oh, the beer brew. I'm breaking into some. Matt, don't be mad at me. I'm breaking into some.
Some chumley?
Some homebrew. Some really good homebrew. Some Adam Chumley beers. we were. We don't do it now. When are we gonna get to
That
these?
says okay. Yes, he says have some homebrew.
Specifically, Adam Chumbley's. That's the don't be mad at me part. But we've got like 37 more, so we got to get through them somehow. John P. I just picked up a bottle of Dog. I'm guessing, Dogfish's Worldwide Stout, which is 18% ABV monster. I have not tried it, but excited. Mike, if you ever have access to getting Dogfish Head, get some for now, some for later. I think on Dogfish Head's 120-minute IPA, they actually have a little blurb on the side, or at least they used to, saying, this is the perfect beer to drink one now and also bury one in a hole and come back to it in 5 years. Thomas Croskery, FYI, I'll be using mostly Kveik at Emerus. And yes, we're back on track after being economied earlier this year. That's good news. Thomas, you should come by, drink beers, and tell me what's going on. Because I have gotten that question, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm talking like personally, people coming here in the chat room and be like, when's that new brewery Emerus going to be opening up? And I'm like, I'm hoping. I've got high hopes, but I don't know. Esteban, good morning. All right, what are we going first? Irish or let's go hazy? We went from red to, do you want to go red to red, or do you want to go red to not red?
Go red to red.
Red to red. Adam Chumbley, Irish red. Speaking of great labels, by the way, the best labels in the homebrew world.
That's it. Should have opened that one.
That one I am upset. I warned you. I gave you time. Is he saying that on the red, or is he saying on the hazy though?
Probably the red.
I feel like we've gotten more. I thought we had 2 of the reds. I don't know. I don't organize the beer. That's what happens when our beer organizer's gone. All right. Any other questions? Shoot them at us. If you are tuning in recently, we've been talking about Kveiks in general. My knowledge on Kveiks is actually not super high, other than the fact that I've used a handful of commercial pitches, such as I've used Voss. I've played with Kveiking, but it's been a long time, so my brain doesn't remember a lot of it. I've used Hornadol. I've used Hothead, but not litigiously, not very often. And I've never used any of the. I don't think I've ever used any of the overall like actual original slurries. But Jimmy has used a lot of the original slurries. 12 of them.
Yeah, at least 12.
So full blends of both the Kveik and whatever
Bacteria
or not come with them, and and there are methods out there. If you are on Facebook or you join some groups, people will send you dehydrated slurries.
Yeah, there's a couple groups on eBay too that there's one lab, as we would call it, but it's not really a lab. It's,
There's a dude, like a homebrewer that's just like drying yeast.
Yeah, they shut down, but there's still some places online.
Nice. By the way, Adam, if you're watching, this is a great Irish red. And Matt, if you're watching, this is the best Irish red I've ever tasted in my life. It's incredible. I can't describe the reaction going on in my mouth with how good this Irish red is.
Pineapple apple co-ferment with Kveik.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Reverend KY. You ended up co-pitching and the crowds unplugged the vent. And you exploded the tote. They definitely, with the high fermentation, there's definitely a high krausen.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
like Heffies in general, where they get that big head, but 2 or 3 times as much.
Reverend KY, where do you get your totes from? Or answer that in private, because I'm curious. I wanted to buy a tote of. Were you at the event that I did with One Tree, where I brought in a tote of apple juice?
No.
I did that one year, and
It might be before I even started.
Yeah, it could have been.
I was June of 18, so.
Yeah, it was around that same time. It might have been the year before. But yeah, I did an event with One Tree where because they bought, bring in totes of blended juice and all that, and then they originally, before they were as big as they are now, what they did when they opened up was they just fermented in the tote that the juice came in. Well, I don't know if you know what I'm
Like
talking about. The
the
giant
white ones with the frame.
Yep. Yeah. Those giant square-looking totes.
Yeah.
But I've reached out to a handful of like juice people in Yakima, and it doesn't seem as like getting totes in seems more. It's not as easy as I thought it would be, I guess would say. But when they brought it over, they just like put it in the back of the truck. They brought it over. A bunch of homebrewers came. They filled up their carboys, and whatever their blend was, what One Tree's blend, like it's the best cider I've ever made. And I made 15 gallons, 3 different 5-gallon carboys, and a lot of people that filled up their carboys made really, really good ciders, and they were all bringing back bottles. But
Yeah.
I want to figure out how to get them.
Where the science comes into it, where you're mixing the sweet apples and the tart apples.
You got to have the right precursor acids and tannins and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that's it's beyond my knowledge, but I would love to get a tote of juice that's even close to that good. And I'd love to do another. I think it'd be fun to do another like homebrewed cider day where I have a tote and people can come and fill up carboys. And it was cheap too. I think it was like we were doing like $1 a gallon or something like that. Like,
Esteban says he's used Voss for some batches, but his finish isn't as dry. I know there's a common thing where they finish out kind of a little bit higher as a final gravity, which a lot of time is nutrients and oxygen.
yeah,
I think that's one of the problems with underpitching sometimes there too, when that's one reason why I'm not against doing the standard pitch.
right.
Plus, it's not worth trying to save a little bit of a liquid slurry.
Yeah.
If you have a liquid one.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing is, that's where I like the original cultures, because you got 3 or 4 different yeast strains in there. So
Yeah,
if one kind of craps out, you got the other 2 to finish it out. I haven't had a stuck fermentation other than using a commercial isolate.
yeah, I agree. And one of the things that I have an advantage on a lot of people is the fact that we have just a ton of nutrients in the back because we buy in bulk. We've got we buy the 5-pound bags of nutrients, and so we've got plenty of that. And then we also have pure oxygen, which not a lot of people on the homebrew scale. If you don't have pure oxygen, you should get it because it's really good. But yeah, with the Kveik specifically, people don't realize how much oxygen it sucks up. It's a vacuum. I say vacuum instead of vacuum all the time now because I watched DBZ Abridged, Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and one of the lines that Goku says, "But space is a vacuum," and now I always say vacuum instead of vacuum. A little backstory on why I say weird things. I have ADD, and my brain always connects words to things that I've seen or heard.
Reverend KY says he gets his totes from multiple places.
Hodgepodge of folk, local wineries have my favorite ones. Well, tell them to send me one. Let me know what I have to do. I want one. Also, it'd be awesome to get a tote of like wine juice. Must? It's called must.
Yeah.
Wine must. I think a lot of homebrewers would jump on the idea of getting a fresh press, and there's not a lot of resources out there. That we used to do like way back in my early homebrewing days when less the stuff was done on the internet. There used to be like meetup events at wineries where they would do a crush, and they'd have enough wine must to go into their own fermentations. But then they'd also like say, "Hey, homebrewers, you want to come and like fill up your wine fermentation vessels with the must that we're crushing?" And that was a big thing. And now it's just not. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I'd love to organize an event where I can get fresh wine must, cider, juice, all that stuff. Bring homebrewers in, fill up some carboys. Get people making some good juice for cheapies. Matt Weiser is drinking a dry hopped rice saison. That sounds really good. That's not a homebrew, is it?
No, he was driving to a brewery.
Oh, nice.
So.
Bring me some. I want it. I'll trade you some beer for some beer. Floater Joe, from my experience, canner is great, but owning a pallet of cans is not so good. That is not inaccurate. I don't know, we had a pallet of cans right now, or we have a pallet of malt and random other crap that I bought. But yeah, we ended up putting them all into like garbage bags and trying to store them up there. But it's a lot of cans.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of space.
That's one of the benefits of switching from bottles to kegs too.
That's true, yeah.
Now I have just 10 kegs sitting there.
There is something special about doing what Adam does, like being able to can your own beer and put your own label on it. I think Reverend KY also commented on Adam's labels. He makes some really fantastic labels.
Mail some, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, mail some. Sean Huntley, I have beer news. Brewbuilt is kicking butt. They absolutely crushed it at the Grass Brew Festival and are close to opening their tap house. Nice. I need to come down and do that and visit the tap house. You told me about that, I don't know, months ago. And I was going to be down in the California area, and then I wasn't. But when they open up, I'll come down, and I'll hang out with your homebrew club, and I will visit there.
Daniel, you want to make some beer labels, but you don't want to can stuff? You can always do it on the bottles. You can get an Avery, just Avery shipping labels work, and then it's pretty basic, but you can kind of make it on their website.
Oh, nice.
Or there's beerlabelizer.com, which is free.
Yeah, or you can make a label and design it, and then I will print it out, and then I'll put it on my own can and then drink it. So I mean, that doesn't really help you out for actually getting the beer label can, but I will have fun. Yeah, and it's the can labels fit pretty well on a regular beer bottle too.
It kind of goes right with that recess.
Yeah,
with most bottles.
I have some of the same labels that we printed out for cans. I put them on some wine bottles over there just to show people we can make labels. Peter, what am I making a label for? Whatever you want. We've got all sorts of beers, and I will pretend that whatever beer is in the can is whatever label you make, and then you'd be making the label for fun. But I would put beer in a can and put your label on it, and then I would drink it on live stream.
Matt's got the good idea for the state beers.
Oh yeah, state beers. Yeah, we need people out there to design our state beer labels. And so we're going to start with Alabama. Is that right? And we're doing pecan pie, and I forget what kind of fish we're using. Salad official. Greetings from Vienna. Just won our national championships of the fruited goza in the fruited beer category with my first competition entry. That's awesome. Also, send me some.
Pecan red export lager.
Yeah, that sounds delicious. Yeah. Reverend KY, every beer is a fish beer if you try hard enough. Every beer. All right. I think of some questions. We got one more beer and 18 more minutes. Give you a rinsey poo. Also, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button, punch that like button, and body slam that comments box.
Pacification question. You just bought a 4.5 gallon brew pot, and it was recommended that he pacify it, so read up on it. You got conflicting information for care. Set him straight.
So first of all, get all the machining oils off of it with some Peebs. PBW or any caustic, any alkaline. You can passivate with pretty much. Well, there's a lot of acids you can passivate with. I use acid cleaner number 5. We've got a video on passivating with acid cleaner number 5 from 5 years ago, a long time ago. But you can also use like Barkeeper's Friend, which is probably the cheapest way to get a passivating acid. Basically all you do is you fill it up at concentration, and then you empty it out, and you do not rinse. You let it air dry after doing that, and then that air drying forms oxide compounds that keep it clean.
With Barkeeper's Friend, would you still do a whole fillet, or would you just do a paste all around it on the inside?
I've always done, so I haven't used Barkeeper's Friends, but I've always done diluting to a full fill. From what I understand, Barkeeper's Friend's still cheap enough that it works. But that said, I don't know. Paste probably works. I've just always done it in liquid form. So.
That sounds good. You can send me the list.
Text you current list for feedback. Nice. Roll Tide. Roll Tide. You can also passivate with weaker acids. So you can passivate with star sand. Even it's just star sand to passivate is going to be like 5 times more concentrated.
Yeah,
And
other than like an ounce per gallon or something.
It's an ounce per gallon for. Oh yeah, it's an ounce per gallon for passivation. Yeah,
'cause
concentration.
It's like ounce per 5 for
Yep.
regular sanitation. I
Um,
think that's what Logan mentioned in that video.
yeah. But yeah, basically, after you fill it up, then let it air dry. The air drying is the most important part, and that's the thing that most people get wrong is they think that it's immediately passivated. It is not.
So when you fill it up all the way, do you let it sit for like an hour or two and then drain it, or
It doesn't take that long. It's like 5 minutes,
5
but
minutes, and then just drain it and let it air dry from there?
yep. Usually when I'm doing it though, I do let it sit for longer just because I'm usually got other things going on. So it doesn't hurt to let it sit for longer. And then I always try to. It's nice if you're passivating with an acid that you can use for something else too. So if you can like take the same, like let's say you are using star sand, you can take the same star sand and like throw it into something for sanitizing.
Yeah.
Put it into a couple different kegs, dilute it out a little bit, and sanitize some kegs at the same time. Reverend's done it with citric, and it came out chrome. Nice. Thoughts on heat wrap on a plastic fermenter from Zilla? Most heat wraps are fine. Yeah, most heat wraps, especially for their 4 home brewers, work well on plastic. And the FermZilla, even though it's so FermZilla is like very thin, lightweight PET, but it can the heat wrap doesn't actually go up to a temperature that melts plastic.
I use seedling mats.
Sealing mats?
Seedling for like growing seedlings.
Oh yeah.
That's what I bought.
So yeah, just get a little layer of it, like insulation
It's
between,
also
just in
'cause
case.
It's a big panel, like a sheet of paper, versus like some of those strips.
Right.
That's where I would be more concerned, is when you just have those strips for the heating things.
Yeah, exactly. They got to be a little bit more, especially with such a thin plastic. If you like weakened a certain area or something like that, and then it started to warp.
Especially if it's one that's pressurized, you don't have a weak spot.
Yeah, good point. The firm wrap is the one that we carry, and I think there's a lot of other like more wide spread out kind of mats that are becoming more commercially popular. I got 10 gallons of Sata going right now. Send me some. Fresh Country Ales. What's your favorite wheat beer to brew and to drink? Favorite wheat beer to brew and to drink? I don't brew a lot of wheat beers. Well, when I do, it's usually like, hey, I've got wheat that I want to get rid of.
Your hothead.
Yeah, I should do that. Hothead Kveik. I do usually tend to brew wheat beers in the American style, like the brighter, neutral profile with a little bit of citrus to them or something like that. That's how I like them.
Yeah.
The banana just kind of sits on my palate a little bit, and I can't session on banana, clovey, Belgian style wheat beers very easily. So that's my favorite. But yeah, it'd be fun to try some hothead. Get a little bit of mango character. Throw in some actual oranges or something like that.
Yeah.
Can you passivate kegs? Absolutely, you can. The air drying part is difficult if it's a Sankey keg because obviously they're completely closed when they're not have stuff in them. But most keg washers on the commercial scale come with they're hooked up to what are those compressed air machines called?
Air compressor?
That thing. They're hooked up to air compressors, which you use to get out the the rinse water and the caustic, and so you can air dry them using the air compressor. Fresh ginger lime. Matt does do a ginger lime wheat, and I've tasted that, and it's good. Nom nom. Sean Huntley. Oh, Reverend KY. Oh, you guys said take out the keg spear to make sure it worked. That also lets it air dry. Good call. I hate taking out spears though. Taking out spears is my enemy. Did you know that Matt from Whistlepunk Matt, like for 5 years or so, like until recently, he de-speared all his kegs to clean them.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he only recently got a keg washer where he didn't take out spears. And like I don't know how much beer he produced, but did that. He did that. I would hate myself. I'm sure he got really good at it, but I do not like de-spearing kegs. Fresh Country Ales, Dunkelweizen. Dunkelweizens are fun as a wheat beer because of I get a holiday vibe from those. I don't know what you're thinking is. Yeah, nice. That was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, no, I love Dunkelweisens. I think they're fun. They're fun holiday beers. I think they can absorb a lot of flavors too. There are like a lot of things you can put into them to like make them more fun.
Yeah, I think that the cocoa and chocolate really mixes well with the banana and clove.
Yeah, I agree. By the way, Adam Chembley, this is great. It's very, very good. Hazy IPA, 6%. You're off to great hazies. Today is your IPA. Your beer is waiting, so get on your way. Follow us on Instagram at Silvana Brewing. Designed by at Artie Earl. Oh, the beer you'll brew. This is made with juice yeast and mosaic hops. It's very good. Good job. He is crazy. All right, a couple more minutes. If you got any last minute questions, let us know. Our current viewers are up to 49, the highest that they've been so far. And we're out of stuff to talk about. 51, dang.
One thing I would say with Kveik and stuff would be try making something that's not as hop forward when you try something new and just see what the flavor profile is.
That's a really good point. Especially because they have so many flavors that kind of...
Excluding Lutra.
But yeah, all like Hornadol and Voss and all that, they have so many flavors that are bright and citrusy and have flavors that mimic or blend well with hops.
Yeah.
But you never know what they are unless you try them in a neutral beer. Have you done a lot of... so I know you like wheat beers with the hothead. Those are relatively neutral, right?
Yeah. Like that one I use like an ounce of Cascade at 60 and at 5.
Yeah, so pretty bare minimum in terms of what you do. Have you done a lot of like lighter beers, like, I don't know, Kolsch bases or regular pale ale bases, sans the hops?
I haven't done anything without hops, but I'll do still like an ounce at the bitter and then an ounce at the end, which is still so light. And I'll pick kind of a more neutral hop. Maybe find something with a little bit of the descriptors that are similar to the yeast, so it's still an enjoyable beer to make. But I'll still go with just a standard wheat beer, and I can do that with any of the Kveiks. Because my in-laws, their favorite beer, or at least her dad's favorite beer, is Widmer's Heffy.
Oh, gotcha.
It's American wheat, basically.
Standard easy drinker. That makes sense.
So I'll just do that, especially when there's bottles. So like give them a bunch of bottles, or now they have the adapter, so the kegerator. So I'll make them a keg of something.
Nice. Daniel almost has a state beer label. I'm just kind of reading through what's going on.
Yeah.
Daniel, if you have a state beer label done in the next, 5 minutes or so, you can email it over and I'll print it out and it'll be ready to put on a can on the stream. Matt says, I have some other nasty ingredients to replace. What is the least amount of fish beers we can do for state beers? So there's 50 states. We could probably do as little as like, I don't know, only 50 fish beers.
Yeah, I'll do either a wheat beer or just like what you call like a blonde ale or whatever, just something nice and light.
Yeah.
For when I'm testing out the yeast.
And I think that's good to like know what you're building on too. If you have a good example of like what the neutral profile will do with the Kveik, then you can. It's a lot easier to put on the flavors because you have enough experience with hops to know like, hey, now I can add on this amount of hoppiness or this amount of whatever else. Even with like body and malt, like bigger malt characters too.
Because I think there's a lot of when Kveik hit commercially, there's a lot of ones that just they take like their standard recipe at commercial breweries, add the Kveik because it was the hype thing. But it wasn't a great beer because they didn't take the time to know what the influence was going to be. To
make the adjustment. So if they had like big bitter fruit bombs with hops and all that, and they added Kveik on top of it, it might have gone overboard a little bit, or they might have thinned out the beer. Depending, some Kveiks can over ferment what a normal yeast will do, and so a drier beer with the more bitterness can be extra.
And there's some of them that push that bitterness more for somehow. We even know the IBUs may be calculated the same, but it tastes or presents itself as more bitter. So
there's some people out there that are saying that Kveik like produces a natural amount of acidity. I don't know. Have you looked into the research on that?
I know it drops the pH a little bit more than standard beer yeast, but I'm not sure how or why.
I haven't for the beers that I've made. I haven't had a over acid producing effect. I haven't taken pHs on all my final products, so I don't know side by side. But I've never tasted the acid difference, at least not yet. Not to say I can't make it happen. Trev Who, Pilsners and lagers with Kveik yeast, is it the future? I think Kveik yeast is going to be very, very prominent in the future. If for no other reason than the people that are making like those medium-sized breweries can save a lot of money using Kveik.
Jake Campo just made a Martzen that he brought to the last homebrew share.
Mm-hmm.
It was super clean. He used Lutra on that one. I think he said like 95.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really nice.
The pseudo lager that we've got, we call it Genus Tone. That one's Lutra, and it's been good every time we've done it. It's gone well. Have you tried brewing with sorghum grains ever? It's an African grain common in South Africa for their traditional beers. I have brewed with sorghum only for the purpose of making gluten-free beer. I did not like it. Matt says the same thing. I've not fresh, but he hears it's gluten-free. Yeah, I've done it to try to make gluten-free beers. I didn't like the beer probably because of other reasons. It wasn't the sorghum itself, but I've only made it for the gluten-free properties.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how many different gluten-free things there are now.
Mm-hmm.
All the different like character malts and stuff that they produce with the buckwheat. They
Yeah.
can roast it and malt it and everything. But again, I think you need to try it kind of basic. Maybe make a 1 gallon batch so you're not having 5 gallons.
Yeah, I don't know.
But then you can kind of build from there.
Yeah, for me, making gluten-free stuff doesn't make a lot of sense because we've got gluten just kind of probably floating around here.
Yeah.
Instead of how much other grains we produce. But I do think it's fun to like see what sorghum can do. And they've got oats are technically gluten-free, but also our oats are probably processed with, in the same facility as all the other grains, and so we can't gluten-free it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of other grains you can use, sorghum, millet, oats, all sorts of different stuff that you can use and they have companies that are, like you said, they're roasting them, they're making crystal versions of those, all that. So there's the whole world of opportunities using non-barley grains. But it's a whole world that I don't need to go into. Pamela Hockler, will it be an episode soon? Soon might be an overstatement, but there will be another episode. Producing those is a lot more complex than a lot of people realize, and it's hard for me to do if I don't have the right people/stuff in place. Matthew Lopez, we accidentally sucked a liter of double-strength Star San up into the fermenter. We read the yeast. We'll clean it up, clean up the phosphoric acid. Should we ride it out and see what happens, or should we dump it? How big of a batch of beer?
6 gallon batch of Maibach.
6 gallon batch of Maibach, and it's a liter. Ride it out and see what happens. Star San's not going to be bad for you, so if it tastes bad, don't drink it. And if it tastes good, drink it.
Could they add a little bit of maybe like baking soda if it gets too acidic, like that pH thing?
I wouldn't do baking soda. I wouldn't worry too much about the pH. If it ends up being, I would dilute for pH rather than
just dilute it.
Yeah, rather than doing it. But if it's a liter, it's a liter of double strength Star San. So, how much is that? That's compared to the 5 gallon batch. No, that's good. Yeah, you might barely taste the acidity on the phosphoric acid. Yeah, but I doubt it. And phosphoric acid is an acid that's part of normal yeast metabolism. So if the yeast is still munching, it might uptake some of that.
Yeah, and I use phosphoric for my acid adjustment, so it's not like it's a bad acid to worry about. So
exactly, yeah. It's in the saponification or the saponifier in Star San is also metabolizable by yeast and safe to drink. So I wouldn't worry about it. If you're worried about getting sick, don't be. I would just think about it from the flavor perspective. If it tastes good, drink it. If it doesn't taste good, don't. Peter, what's your email? genusbrewingco@gmail.com. genusbrewingco@gmail.com. Are you gonna have a label done? Is he gonna have a label done? I'm gonna get to print out a label live. I'm so excited about it. Like I'm very excited about our label printer. I get to make labels all the time now. It's so fun. I'm like, I just made this label. Let's print it out and put it on beer. I can make a label that says like penis head on it, and then just like print it out and make a penis head beer. It's so stupid, but it's I want to make like random like joke labels or whatever. Like I'm gonna start canning water, just tap water, and just putting stupid labels on them.
Daniel said he's still working on it. You won't have it ready in time.
Okay, we'll get it for next week. Yeah, Revan's mentioning on the what's the pH. Matt Weiser, I listened to Gluten-Free Panel at HomebrewCon a few years ago, and it was amazing. Nice.
You got the panel where they did the popped amaranth. They popped it like popcorn to do like to torrefy it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they just use it like in a popcorn maker. Amaranth or
that's awesome.
One of the other seeds that they can use. Just pop it up that way. And it was kind of interesting because I was listening to it because it was one of, I think it was from a couple years ago, but as like it's not just gluten free, you can use it as a character aspect in beer.
Yeah,
because it has its own flavor profile. Use it as a kind of a specialty grain that way.
Nice.
In regular beer.
That'd be fun. I need to experiment more with gluten free grains. I've used torrefied, so for a long time ago, to give you guys my beer history, you guys probably already know that I hate carapils, or some of you might, but a long time ago, my substitute for carapils was, and this is like my first couple of years of brewing, I used torrefied wheat consistently, and I love the fact that it gave you that toasty character from the popping. I don't know what, so I know that obviously the toasty quality is going to be that, but I don't know what other flavors Amaranth gives, but the torrefication part is nutty.
Character, I think.
I'd go good with that toasty, kind of popped flavor.
Yeah.
The torrefied flavor. Daniel, really want to make labels with the Dolly 2 though. The AI, oh yeah, the AI image generator. I've done some AI imaging already, and I think it's very fun. Sean Huntley, give a shout out to my friend Toby, who is a fellow brewer and works for Rooftop, and is a proud father of Kevin. Happy birthday, Kevin. Happy birthday, Kevin.
Happy birthday.
And shout out to Toby, who is a brewer and has I'm guessing Kevin is a newborn or a 1-year-old or a young child or a 20-year-old who also is now making beer with him. I don't know. That's awesome. All right, it's past 10. We don't have a ton more questions coming in. We are done with our beer, and so we're going to start working on closing out. Jimmy, any last minute things you want to say to the world?
No. Oh yeah, there's Capri. I just saw that. That's the one that they took the Voss and mixed it with juice.
Voss mixed with the juice?
Then they actually hybridized it.
Oh, nice.
Got heritage of Kveik, but isn't anymore, I guess you'd say.
I need to get into some of this new hybrid stuff. We have a ton of Capri, so I just probably should just. I got to make an IPA today or tomorrow, so maybe that's what I use. Got to start a starter though. Yeah, I haven't got into a lot of the hybrid stuff, but also my brain hasn't been in the beer world too much in the last couple of years, so I'm trying to relearn some stuff and learn some new stuff.
Newborn,
nice. So by birthday, you mean like actual birthday? Happy born day. Happy being born day. Like, subscribe, comment. We'll see you guys later. Send us beer. Send us labels. Rooftop Brewing in Salmon Bay. Salmon Bay. Let me know what state that's in, and then we will also make salmon in that beer that we make for that state. Matt, right? Right, Matt? Matt loves fish beers. It's his favorite. All right, we'll see you guys later. And I'm closing it out.